So there's this little boy named James, and early on in his life, he made a decision that one day he was going to create this unique cheese, and he was going to make a difference in the world. He was going to go on to be a very rich and wealthy and happy man. And so in Chicago, he's walking the streets with his pony Patty, and they are out and about making different sales. And one day he stops, he feels very fatigued, he feels somewhat tired, and he says, "Patty, we need to have a talk. I mean, this isn't working. We are working really hard, and we're not really making any money." So Patty's really taking it in, you know how ponies are. So it's like, so he said, "Here's the thing." He said, "I've really gotten clear that we need to think of God first. We need to put God first. And if we put God first, then I have a feeling things will be different." And so as he's moving on in life, he would later say, as the superintendent of North Shore Baptist Church, that his greatest joy was serving God and also being a layperson. That he appreciated that more than he did being a corporate multimillionaire. If you've ever had Maxwell House coffee, if you've ever had Philadelphia cream cheese, if you've ever served your child macaroni and cheese, if you've had Kool-Aid, not the kind that we live in illusion about, but the kind you drink, if you've had Jell-O, then you can thank James and Patty for that particular day of Kraft Foods, that they had a going to God meeting. And they decided, first and foremost, what was the most important. When we think about the teachings of unity, our fundamental first principle is to know that God is a presence of power for good. There is no other enduring power on the planet, in the world. There's nothing ever that is against us. There is a power for good, and therefore we are inherently good. None of us would ever consider building a home and not knowing who the contractors were, not knowing who they were, what they were about. We'd never consider our dream home being designed by someone that we had very little relationship with. More often than not, people have their dream lives, or lack of, affiliated, assigned to a God that they've never spent time in question. How do I believe in you? What do I believe in you? How do I really get that you're good? What does that mean? And is that ethereal, or is that something deep and having depth? Many years ago, I really needed to shift myself, and I still go through that in my life. Sometimes instead of making my life different, I need to make God different for me. Do you relate? I need to make God different for me, because I was taught all this stuff that so much of my life I've spent with a new idea, yes? And so I like to use the shock factor with myself, because it has to get me out of that fundamental stuff that I grew up with. And so an idea that I came up with is that God is likened to a photocopy machine. God is likened to a photocopy machine in that it produces, as a law, as a principle, whatever you put on there. So you can put beautiful images, you can put, I am grateful to be alive, I am healthy, I am vibrant, I now have the soulmate love of my life, I work a great career, I feel better than I've ever felt in my life, I love my sobriety, and you take it over to the photocopy machine and it produces as many copies of that into the ethers as you would love, yes? But you can go the next day, same person, same photocopy machine, and you can put, I don't know how I make it. My children won't speak to me. I have problems. I don't like the job I'm at. And I just don't even know why I even keep bothering. And you can write that, and you can put it at the same photocopy machine. Do you think it's going to start smoking? Do you think it's going to turn red and go, caution, caution? What's it going to do? It's going to produce exactly what you put on there. It's not going to question it. It's going to take your data and produce. God is impersonal. but personal to all who know him. God is impersonal, but personal to all who know him, and how this principle can work in our lives. The issue with God in modern day 21st century times is people keep trying to make God personal, which brings them brings God to a very fundamental personal level. God's mad at me, frustrated with me, I didn't go to church, God's out to get me, I should have known, my prayers weren't answered, and we're talking infinity here. Yes? Are you connecting? Because we still have a ways to go. Does this work for you? We're talking infinity here. We're talking something that's very phenomenal that works. Personalizing God is letting the universe see God through you. Personalizing God is meeting the road where you're at and allowing people to see how through the very nature of your understanding God differently, that your life is different. Yes? So one of my favorite scriptures is the very beginning of the Bible. And it tells us very clearly, let's read it together. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. In the beginning, God. Like James Kraft decided, I have this ideal for my life, and up front and personal, I'm going to put God at the very center. It says in the very first part of the Bible that God created the heavens and the earth. It doesn't say God created the heavens in hell. It doesn't say God created the heavens in struggle. God created the heavens and the earth. This is the implication metaphysically. This is the rule, the law, the life part of how we manifest heaven on earth. Can you sit with that? This is how heaven is not a place one day we're going to see each other and go, what class are you going to? Or we don't have to go to class because we're just oming up here. Heaven is a place that we bring into the manifestation of here on earth. There's only two places you can spend your time, of heaven or of earth. And as we evolve, we learn that they're both the same thing. But that's a different Sunday talk for another day. Right? So in that space, it tells us how to manifest that the earth was formless and empty. Often our dreams, they have no form. We're telling ourselves we're healthy when we just got another diagnosis. There's no form to that. But yet we hold a form of what that can look like. And we envision that in just over the surface of the deep. We go to the depth of ourselves. And the Spirit of God is what? Hovering over the waters. It's hovering over the fluidity of life, the infinite God in all its wisdom. I spent so many years of my life perceiving God as a Maytag repairman. I just pulled that whole card. Oh, dear God, would you please come and help me fix this? Can you help me? I really messed up at my job. Could you make it better for me, please? A Maytag repairman, fixing, correcting what is broken. That is not a universal law, because universal law in its wisdom, like that of a photocopy machine, cannot act on the past. It acts in the beginning right now. It acts in the beginning right now. Our church budget, we address it now. Yes? Yes. Your life, your dreams, your health is about now. People will spend endless hours praying, oh, dear God, please, just let me be the way I used to be. What is that? Really? Absolutely not. Ultimately, we don't mean that. We want to be the best we've ever been right now, yes? Yes. Dear God, I accept right now the best I can be In this moment. That's law, that's life, that's going to happen to you. Give yourselves a great big hand. As long as we keep praying for the broken, the repaired, we will always create things that are broken and need repaired. Because that's the law we keep bringing into this consciousness. In the book, How to Speak Unity, I talked about what it means. Oh, not that one. Come on, paperclip, work with me here. Omnipotence. What is the meaning of omnipotence? When we talk about God, what are we saying? It's another way of stating what we believe God to be. God is all-powerful and knowing. As spiritual students in Unity, we begin to shift our thinking in love of God from a person who's in the sky to a God, which is an unlimited principle and who is all-powerful. When we can accept the vast and emerging definition of God, then we're able to see how our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. In current time, the very act of prayer does not change God. What does prayer change? It changes us. All of our prayers are heard because we know that God is all-powerful and all-knowing. We stop telling God how big our problems are, and we start telling our problems how big our God is. The growth is within us, you see. The growth is within us. I love the story of Jonathan Edwards. He was a revivalist. And he sat down and he made a list, and at first he wrote down 21 things he wanted to accomplish in his life. And on down the road, he added to that, and he had 70 things in his life, and he achieved them all. And so I ask you, more than the list that Santa Claus checks every year, if you would be willing this week to either update your list or to make a new one for yourself. And what he said is that he realizes that this list, this big idea list, it really is likened to the grace of God in order to make it happen. It's really God's job. It's the list going on the photocopy machine that makes it occur. And he said that his part was to read the list at least once a week, if not every day, and say what part of me needs to evolve so this can come true. Yes? So in 1997, I made a list, and this is, these papers are kind of yellow. All right, let's see what it, travel to Peru, check. Travel to Alaska, check. Travel to Canada, check. Meet Shirley MacLaine, check. Let's see, yes. Author a book, check, check, check. Right? Cruises all over the world, check. Yes? The list, the check. 1997. Where I was in 1997, if I prayed to a Maytag repairman, I would still be where I was in 1997. I prayed to this list. I prayed to a new consciousness. I prayed to a new space. I still do. And as you know, I always say, it's not bragging rights. I'm sorry, it's birthing rights. Because in order for you to be able to say, I wrote this down 20, 30 years ago, and now it has realized it's all in the name of God through you, yes? Give God a great big hand. That's the way it works. I went to visit one of our members this week in rehab, and so in that space that we held, she had had an injury that kept repeating itself, and she had done, as she said, all the things right. She had been in a 7-month program and did everything they told her to do. She was on the mend. She was releasing the cane. It's a fireball, amazing human being. I just adore her. And so she finds herself slipping on a mango pill, falling again, injuring, same injury, breaking her wrist in 2 places. So when I go over to see her, you know, I'm really a person that there's a time to talk and there's a time to be quiet. And I sat there and I just asked for a divine affirmative idea to share with her. And what I told her, I said, you know, many years ago, I was in a class, I was taking notes, and I heard a Native American Indian say that in their language, they do not have the word why. It does not exist. They don't believe or practice the word why. And I said, so affirmatively, we can decide this evening that our time could be spent in the why, which we'll never really know the true answer to, in this evolution of a soul, and we never know why, even though we pride ourselves in thinking we do. Or we could come up with an affirmative prayer which will facilitate the process of moving forward and claiming for you the best that you've ever been. Which choice do we need to make? Yes? And so that's the space of your life, is release the why, because you're unity. And focus on affirmative prayer to an infinite God of divine potential that is waiting, ready, right now, in the moment, to respond accordingly to your request. Does that work? I remember back in 1985, on record still, in the 20th century in Atlanta, was their coldest winter ever. Do you remember that? We were 10, I think. So it was -8, and then became colder than that. And I remember being there at the airport. I was being called to Panama with the military, and I felt like I was in the freezer. I was never been so cold in all my life. And anyway, so I wind up in Panama, and I get off that plane, just emptying layers, taking them off as quick as I could. And I'm in that space. It's 85 degrees. People are wearing bathing suits. And I said, oh, God, I've been moved, and I'm ready to move. Prayers don't have to be long. Okay, I've been moved, and I'm ready to move. That was in January. In August, I'm fully moved in to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affirmative prayer to the future, not the broken repairman idea of why me. Yes? The affirmation, the consciousness, the level at which you can participate to have this extraordinary and incredible life. What is that visual? What are the things on your list that not only stretch your consciousness, but allow the universe to emerge in its further development, because you've created a paradigm that's worth stretching for? It's worth stretching for. Proving to yourself over and over and over and over and over again that you can convince the universe to keep you where you are is exhausting. And ultimately, it puts wrinkles on your face. So here we are, gathered in the affirmation of what we hold for you, each of you. Who you are in your becomingness. What is that you see for yourself? As a congregation, as a community, we are in an alignment that it is time that we not only prove it to ourselves personally, but we prove it to one another as a collective whole. Are you with me? Thank you for coming today. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you.